1966 was the year the Alfa Montreal was born. Alfa Romeo wanted to make a lavish coupe and gave the developers a free hand. Practically the only thing demanded of the 200 horsepower, 8-cylinder sports car was that it not be too shy. 3 years later, it inherited the dream engine of the 33 Stradale, a classic racing unit that the engineers had trouble taming for the streets. Ulrich Pfeiffer's affair with the Montreal began in 1972. His obsession was triggered when he saw a poster of the car and fell in love. A year later, he bought one as a demonstration vehicle. Today, he is one of just 187 registered owners and has absolutely no regrets. The engine has 160,000 kilometers on the clock, but runs like it was born yesterday. This does involve a lot of close attention from the owner. Ulrich says he's always checking whether the oil and air filter are clean. These are things that need to be done before you take the car out for a drive. Then you can get going. Driving around with the sound of that sumptuous 8-cylinder is very much a labor of love for the 65-year-old. And somehow the two-seater actually seems to have a touch of the spaghetti western about it. The engine hums like an American small block, but its heart is 100% Italian. But it takes real guts to drive the Montreal. It has not the most responsive brakes and a rather modest rear axle. There's no power steering, and curves should be approached with caution. In 1967, the prototype was flown to Montreal for the Expo in the Canadian city. It arrived by special transport, landing in the hall for cars of the future. The ecstatic response prompted Alfa Romeo to start series production. The first production model was unveiled 3 years later. It was barely distinguishable from the version that had debuted in Montreal, and it was the Canadian city that gave the car its name. It retained the futuristic-looking dashboard, one of the most stylish to ever emerge from the Alfa design department. The Montreal borrowed the chassis of the Alfa Romeo Giulia, and in Germany cost some 35,000 Deutschmarks, a small fortune back then. The racing engine, however, was quite reliable, but proved too complicated for regular mechanics. The result was countless engine failures. Spare parts are, of course, not that easy to come by. Years ago, Ulrich Pfeiffer began collecting all he could find, and his little garage is home to everything from complete engines to nuts and bolts. But the engine has problems that are beyond Ulrich's ability. He's nonetheless happy to put the V8 engine through its paces, preferably on straights. The Monty's not a big fan of tight curves. He's about to place his Montreal in good hands. Right nearby is mechanic and former Alfa Romeo dealer Dieter Gleich, another absolute authority on all things Montreal. In the 1970s, he drove the weighty Montreal to a string of successes.
Hallo!
Na?
Ulrich reckons the car isn't running properly. It's spluttering a bit. If there's something wrong with the engine, then it's usually down to the fuel injection pump. The mechanical pump is a masterful creation, but it requires sensitive treatment, like a capricious racehorse. And this is where many mechanics meet their limits. And while the engines are struggling, so were things on the production front. The OPEC oil crisis meant that a car consuming 18 liters of gasoline per 100 kilometers did not have a rosy future. The end finally came in 1977. Production over 7 years totaled just 3,925. But the Montreal was and remains a dreammobile. It's a dream that today can be yours for some 25,000 euros, but that price is likely to soar in the near future. The boost will likely be as big as that delivered by the 8-cylinder engine that powers the Montreal to 220 kilometers an hour, not forgetting that 5,000 revs per minute conjure up memories of the racetracks of yesteryear.